I have a list of some common words which have a few different ways of pronouncing them, and some people just find them difficult to pronounce. So I'm here to give you the correct answers and to show you exactly how to pronounce these confusing words. Hi everybody, this is Elliott from ETJ English. Thank you very much for coming here to hang out with me today and to practice some British pronunciation. Now firstly, before we begin the lesson, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting my new podcast, Journeys, which is about travel, adventures and life. If you're not following it yet and you haven't listened to the first full-length episode, which is about 30 minutes, you can just click one of the links in the description below and it will take you to the podcast. It would be a great listening practice for you if you really want to start working on mimicking me and improving your pronunciation with listening practice, as I explained in my most previous video. So now I have this list of words which I've accumulated over the past few weeks from people writing comments on my YouTube videos and also from people who are my actual students, members of my pronunciation course. They ask me questions all the time and I have some really great words which are slightly complicated, and I'm going to make them easy for you. The first word that I really need to address for you is the word which really annoys me when natives get it wrong, and especially when they spell it wrong as well. It's not pronunciation, okay? We pronounce something, but when we're talking about it in this way, it's pronunciation. Pronunciation, none. Pronunciation, not pronunciation. As a pronunciation teacher, you can imagine that really annoys me when people get it wrong. Next word, controversy or controversy. Now this one's actually entirely up to you. Some people might tell you that you have to say controversy and some people might tell you that you have to say controversy. In my opinion, it's entirely up to you. The most difficult part, in fact, is pronouncing all of the sounds, okay? So one of them has the schwa sound, controversy, controversy. And the other one has con. Which one do you find easier to pronounce? They're both British, so it depends. It's entirely up to you what you find easier. Would you rather say con or controversy or controversy? Okay, and notice the difference in stress. The reason why we're saying con in that one is because the stress is on con. But when the stress is taken away from this syllable, what happens is we use the schwa to actually relax the syllable. And this happens a lot with the schwa sound, words like police, about. Because the stressed syllable is stressed, we're actually going to relax the syllable which is not stressed and replace it with a schwa sound. So controversy could be controversy in this situation. If it were me speaking, I tend to usually say controversy. That's just how I say it, but it's up to you because both are British. Economic or economic. Again, kind of similar situation, but this time it's either an e or an e. Economic, economic. I hear students say both of these, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter too much. Again, economic, economic. If it were me, I would probably say economic. Okay, so if I'm going to economics class, I would say that instead of economics class. So I would say it's probably more common nowadays to hear economics rather than economics. Let's just get the difference between those two vowels. E, tongue high in the mouth and a big smile. Economics or just like in Elliott. Okay, we slightly spread the lips, not as much as E, but we do slightly spread the lips and the tongue will sit near the front in the middle of the mouth. Elliott, economics. So economics or economics, it's up to you. Now another word which confuses people is the word especially. If you look at the way that it's pronounced in its true form, it's especially. So for example, I really love dogs, especially my dog. I really love dogs, especially my dog. But when a native speaker talks really fast, it might become, I really love dogs, especially my dog. Especially my dog. So what's happening there? Well, you might have noticed that the I is disappearing. In fact, that whole vowel is disappearing and it's now turned into specially. Now, this is not grammatically correct, and we can't think of the word specially as a word in this context. All that's happening is we're being lazy and we're actually removing the vowel sound at the beginning of the word because we're talking fast. Remember, native speakers are very lazy. So I do get lots of students ask me, Elliot, why did my friend say the word specially the other day when it was completely out of context? The truth is, they weren't saying that word. They were just reducing the word especially because it's annoying and we want to relax it. Now, you could also relax it with the schwa sound and it could become especially, especially. That's something which natives do as well, but I would say it's extremely common for people just to say specially. I mentioned in a video before about how people get confused with the words generally and genuinely. That's another reason why, because people kind of want to be lazy and they end up relaxing one of the sounds. And that's what happens. A word, actually, in fact, a sound which I get asked about so much is the diphthong ur. Ur. Now, I want you to think about the word sure. That's how I say it. Sure. And lots of students are quite shocked when they hear me say it like this. But in fact, this is how most natives in the whole country pronounce it. Sure. We don't say sure. Now, people do, okay? I can't just say we don't because I'm not talking on behalf of the whole country. But here's a quick reality check for a lot of you who are learning RP. RP is only spoken. Now, I'm talking about real RP, the RP that people, really associate the UK with. It's only spoken by 2% of the British population. I even read something recently that it's declining even more and it's possibly becoming around 1.51%. Most people, in fact, in the South would talk with a more similar accent to mine, which is what we'd call a modified standard English RP accent, okay? This is the type of accent I teach. So if you like my accent, this is the accent which kind of generally now would be associated with the UK. We don't use the sound really at all in this type of accent. In old-fashioned RP English, we would. So words like sure would be pronounced as sure. And the Queen would do it in the Queen's English accent, okay? Now that's spoken by like 0.5% of the population. So don't really worry about that unless you want to sound like the Queen or if you want to sound like you're from the 1800s. Some people do. If you want a modern pronunciation, whenever you think about this sound, most of the time now it's pronounced as or, which is a very common vowel sound in words like walk, talk, okay? So it's much easier. We are evolving. Two words I saw recently in a comment on YouTube, military and secretary. Firstly, I want to talk about the word military. If you know me, you know that I always recommend Cambridge Dictionary to look at the pronunciation of words. Now, sometimes in Cambridge Dictionary, you'll see a tiny, small, little schwa sound floating around in a word. And students ask me, do I pronounce this? Do I not pronounce this? And my best advice is that I put it in brackets. And I'm just kind of there to say, you can if you want to. So this word, military. If we were to pronounce that little schwa that's floating around there, we would say military. Military. Now that's actually really, really uncommon. And this is usually the case with these little schwas which appear. Usually we just don't pronounce them. It's more common to not use it. So there's a good tip for you if you're ever looking up words in the dictionary and you see that small schwa. Try it without it first. See how it feels. If you prefer it with that schwa, then of course you can do it. So I would say military. Now the next word is secretary. But again, in Cambridge Dictionary, we could say secretary. Now I actually hear a balance. Some people say secretary, some people say secretary. Again, it's much easier just to say secretary. And if something is easier, then that means it's more likely to be in the modern British accent. But some of you I know are extreme fans of Oxford Dictionary. I personally don't use this for my pronunciation lessons, but I did check Oxford Dictionary just to see if they had any difference with this word secretary or secretary. And they did. Now they would say that you pronounce it secretary. So instead of being a schwa sound, secretary, they're saying it should be secretary. Secretary, secretary. Cr or cri. Secretary or secretary. It's up to you. As I said, I find that Cambridge Dictionary tends to be more relatable to modern British English, and that's why I use them. So please do write in the comments below and tell me if any other words confuse you. And maybe in a future video, if you enjoyed this lesson, I'll make another lesson about common confusing words. Don't forget, if you need some listening practice, you can go to my podcast in the description below. Also, if you really are serious about improving your accent and you want me as your personal teacher, you can join my course at etjenglish.com, which has the perfect combination of recorded lessons, downloadable practice files, quizzes, and direct voice messaging with me whenever you want. Skype lessons are a complete waste of time. That's why I've stopped doing them now, just so you know. They really don't help with pronunciation. Grammar, vocabulary, yes, but not pronunciation. I don't want to waste your money. So thank you very much for watching this lesson. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers guys, take care, bye.